believe that?
No, you're supposed to stand right.
I'm supposed to stand here.
And you don't feel like you're naked or something.
Okay. 3 verses. 1, 2, and 3. Would you be free from the burden of sin? There's power in the blood, power in the blood. Would your evil a victory win? There's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Would you be free from your passion and pride? Power in the blood, power in the blood. Come for a cleansing to Calvary's tide. There's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb. Would you be whiter, much whiter than snow? There's power in the blood, power in the blood. Sin stains are lost in its life-giving flow. There's wonderful power in the blood. There is power, power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, wonder-working power in the precious blood of the Lamb.
Rendition. All right, good to see you all. In John chapter 18 and 19, what you really have is sort of a cosmic showdown. And we love showdowns in movies, you know. Think of, what's that movie with Gary Cooper, High Noon? That was like the ultimate showdown. And then you've got Chuck Norris movies and Braveheart. And of course, I don't know what the latest showdown movies are, but we love showdowns. We're kind of wired by God for the big cosmic battle between good and evil. And what we're looking at today is the big battle between God and the accuser, Satan, the devil himself. And at the crucifixion, what's actually happening is Jesus, the new Adam. You know, the first Adam got us into a sinful mess. So Jesus comes as the new Adam, and he squares off against Satan and against his curse, the curse being death and separation from God. And the new Adam, what happens in John 18, the new Adam returns to a garden, not the Garden of Eden, but it's the Garden of Gethsemane. And in the garden, the showdown begins. And it's a garden where the old Adam failed, but the new Adam will be victorious. Now, let me read to you part of that scene in John 18. So Judas came to the grove, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and the Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Jesus, knowing all that was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it you want?" "Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. And Jesus said, "I am he." Now, if you look at that in the Greek language, it's interesting. Because there's a way you can just sort of say, "I am," and there's a way you can sort of say, "I am." And this is the latter. Jesus doesn't just say, "Hey, I'm here," but he says, "I am." And remember, "I am" is the name of God. In Exodus chapter 3, when God appears to Moses in the burning bush, and Moses says, "Who should I tell the people that has spoken to me and sent me?" And God says, "Tell them, I am has sent you." So what Jesus is saying, when he says, the Greek words are ego eimi, I am, he's saying, I'm the God of Israel. I'm the God who made promises to Abraham. I met Moses in the burning bush. I led the Israelites through the Red Sea. I am Yahweh. I am Jehovah. And then it says that when Jesus said, I am he, they drew back and they all fell to the ground. It almost sounds a little bit like the Keystone Cops. But they fall down because God's raw power, just for Jesus, the God-man, just for him to say, I am, just to let out a couple little words like that's enough to knock everyone over. So great is the power of God. Now, the question is, if this is a showdown, who is Jesus' divine power up against? Now, on a human level, you got Judas, and you got the chief priests, and you got the Pharisees, and there's the Roman governor Pilate. But behind those people pulling the strings is Satan. His name means the adversary or the accuser. And Satan hates God. He hates all the people God's made. So Satan loves to accuse. In the Garden of Eden, the serpent deceived the human race, and he brought guilt upon us all so that he could accuse us before God. And the same serpent is slithering around here in John 18 and 19. And once again, now he's accusing the new Adam, Christ, through the chief priests and Judas, and through the crowd, and through Pilate. And when Jesus does finally stand before Pilate, he's really standing before the one who undid us in the Garden of Eden. And that's what this is really all about. The human beings are almost inconsequential. It's the devil behind them. And Jesus, what he does is he walks up to Pilate. In a way, he's walking up to the accuser and stares him in the face and says, this is it. Picture Clint Eastwood saying, make my day. Some of you maybe don't even know who Clint Eastwood is, but there was a time when he could command an audience. And so this is sort of the big goosebump moment. When this is important. You remember we read earlier, Jesus said that, he knew when they came to arrest him, Jesus knowing all that was going to happen to him. See, Jesus, everything on that in John 18 and 19 is going exactly the way that Jesus planned it. Never look at all these events that Jesus goes through and say, oh, what a shame. It's too bad. What a series of unfortunate mishaps. No, this is exactly, Jesus wants the showdown because he wants to win for you and for me. He's going to be victorious over sin and death and the devil. And when he stood before Pilate, Pilate says to him, hey, he's surprised. He says, do you refuse to speak to me? Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you? And Jesus answered, you would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. See, whatever happens to Jesus is only going to happen by God's permission, or you say by Christ's permission. Jesus is going to go through everything he goes through intentionally, and he does it on purpose. Because Jesus is always the king. He's the one ultimately in charge. It's not the devil, not the accuser. It's Jesus. And the way Jesus is going to go about defeating the devil is the opposite of how people think about winning a fight. I mean, when we think of brute force. I mean, the Apostle Peter, when the crowd came to get Jesus, remember, Peter pulled out his sword and he cut off the ear of the high priest's servant. And Jesus said, put your sword away. See, Jesus is going to defeat Satan, but not in the way it happens in the movies. He's going to be defeated. He's going to win by being defeated. Jesus is going to fight also by drinking a cup. John 18, when Peter cut off the guy's ear, Jesus said, Peter, put your sword away. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me? Jesus is saying, look, I mean, if we want to do an armed rebellion, I mean, I can bring in 25,000 angels. It's no problem. But no, I need to do something. I need to drink the cup the Father has given me to drink. Now, in the Old Testament, in the prophets, the cup is associated with God's extreme anger at sin. So to drink from God's cup, it is bitter and dark. It is terrifying. And Jesus is saying that he must receive the full brunt of God's wrath, God's judicial anger towards evil, because that's the only way you and I can be saved. Now, in the book of Exodus, if you remember, God sent those plagues on the nation of Egypt. And one of the plagues was he turned water into blood in the Nile River. All the water turned to blood. Now, in the New Testament, it's interesting how Jesus turns water into wine. And there, that's sort of like a picture of reversing the curse. You think of wine, you think of a party. It's a symbol of joy in God's kingdom. So when we take communion, we can remember that Jesus traded cups with us. Jesus drank the cup, so to speak, of water turned to blood, the cup of God's judgment, the bitter cup of God's judicial anger at our sin. And what we receive is the cup of water turned into wine, forgiveness and love and celebration and being adopted into God's family. See, Jesus, in a sense, drank the cup of poison so that you and I can drink the cup of blessing. And as Jesus is whipped and crucified, he's actually conquering. He's winning. I don't know of any other movie or story where anyone would construe it that way, but that Jesus was being whipped and beaten and crucified, that's how he won. And on the cross, remember how when Jesus is hanging there, at one point he says, I am thirsty. You know, he was obviously terribly dehydrated. He was losing fluids. Remember in John chapter 4 when Jesus was talking to the Samaritan woman at the well, and he tells her, you know, I can give you water that can quench your thirst for all eternity. And at the cross, what Jesus is doing, he's going through this terrible thirst. I mean, he's the one, a member of the Holy Trinity, and perfectly satisfied, but he's experiencing this deep thirst. It's like Jesus is exchanging our spiritual thirst for his satisfying, for his quenching. You know, his thirst on the cross was actually your thirsting for God that was placed on him, and in exchange, Jesus Christ gives you everlasting satisfaction. And the result of this is that there's no longer any basis for Satan to accuse you of anything, right? I mean, the devil will still come to you in quiet moments to accuse you and discourage you. You know, God can't love you, or you're too dirty, you blew it, you're no good, why would God want you? He'll still try that, but his words are nothing more than empty, hot air, because Jesus has disarmed the devil. And the Apostle Paul wrote in Colossians chapter 2, he says, God made you alive together with Christ, having forgiven us all our trespasses. Well, how did he forgive us all our sins? Well, it says by canceling the record of debt that stood against us with its legal demands. You know, the list of all the commandments of God that we've broken. And this he set aside. He nailed that list of our debt to the cross. And in doing that, Jesus disarmed the rulers and authorities. He disarmed them. You know, that's talking about the demonic rulers and authorities, and he put them to open shame by triumphing over them on the cross. So when the devil began to dance, as the spikes were being pounded into Christ's hands and his feet, the sound of the hammer was actually the sweet music of Christ's victory, our victory. At the cross, Jesus, the new Adam, made a complete fool of the devil, doing it in a way that nobody anticipated. And that means that no one on earth or in heaven can ever disqualify you from God's love or disqualify you from God's kingdom, or no one can ever tell you to get out of God's presence. Christ has removed the debt. Christ has given you complete forgiveness. He has been victorious. That means you are God's beloved child forever. Amen. Thank you very